maybe 9, 10 years old or so. My grandparents took my brother Ashley and I on a road trip. I guess it wasn't that much of a road trip, but at 9 or 10, we didn't know where we were going. It seemed like we were going to Canada, maybe even further than that. We were going to my grandparents' cabin that they had, the hunting cabin they had, somewhere up a little past Penn State, so it wasn't the end of the earth. It just seemed that way to us. We were going up to spend a little time. We'd never been there before. This was a cabin, quote unquote, that they shared with some other family members and some friends that would go up, and particularly guys would go up and do the whole deer hunting thing. But my grandparents decided to take us out for a little weekend by ourselves. We loaded up, we got together in the station wagon, and we headed out. Looked like the Griswolds or something there, loaded to the gills. It seemed like it took forever. We finally got there, and when we got there, two very, very energetic, cooped-up boys poured out of the car to observe the cabin. The cabin was in reality a big travel trailer, camper, that had a porch, screened-in porch, built the entire length of it there to give a little more space to it so you could have a few more guys, picnic tables and chairs, just room for people to spread out. Well, my grandfather went up with the key, and grandmother went in, and she opened up the door, and of course, what did we do? Did we go into the car to help carry things in? No, we went into explore mode, and we were supercharged. We were extremely supercharged from all that time waiting, all that time driving, all that time sitting. And we come in through the porch, and we came into the door, and here what we did, we came into this room that was probably the living room, and there's a table there that you could sit and you could eat. And we ran through there, and here's a little kitchenette, and we come through here, and there's a bunk room, and there's a couple bunks in there. And then there was a little bathroom at the end, and there was a door, the little escape hatch there in case, you got to get out and you can't get to that door. And so we're running through, we ran through the living room, we ran through the kitchen, we ran through the bedroom, we ran through the bathroom, we jumped out the window, and boom! Smacked into the door. Did I mention it was a low door? And here we jumped, and first it was boom! And then it was boom! Now, I don't know, honestly, this story varies a little bit depending on who's telling it. I would say my brother was leading. He would say that I was leading. Honestly, it's no better or no worse for anybody following or leading, because we ran through there, ran through the kitchen, or ran through the living room, ran through the kitchen, ran through the bedroom, ran through the bathroom, boom! We did it 3 times before we finally stopped and said, oh, this is not a good idea. I'm pretty certain that's why I didn't get into MIT. It was a painful, painful lesson. It was a painful, probably the most painful follow the leader that I have ever played, and I didn't know that I was playing it when I was. Some of the most inspiring moments that you can think of in life happen when someone leads others and leads them well, leads them, inspires them, encourages them to be more and to do more than they could imagine on their own. Some of those inspiring moments come from that kind of leadership. Maybe if you think about something, a point of reference might be, if you're a football fan, that famous Newt Rockne halftime speech. Win one for the Gipper, and he rallied Notre Dame to come back and beat their arch nemesis, beat the rival's army, and win the game. Or maybe a real personal level, you can think of someone who has touched you, someone who has inspired you, a father, a mother, a grandparent. Maybe it's a teacher who inspired you, who pushed you, said, come on, we're going to do this, you can do this, and led you in such a way that you did something, you experienced something, you accomplished something more than you would have dreamed that you could, or even dared to dream that you could on your own. But if some of the greatest moments, the most inspiring moments in life that we can think of are those moments when someone leads well, some of the saddest and most tragic moments that we can think of in life are those moments when someone who is leading through bad judgment leads others into folly or ruin, leads them down a path to destruction in one way or another. You can think of a couple of examples, just real basic examples here. Hour or so down the road that way, you can run into Gettysburg. And if you think about the battle that happened in Gettysburg a little over a century ago, it's one of the defining moments of the Civil War. Probably the defining moment of that battle was something that I'm sure many of you recognize, Pickett's Charge. What was that? It was the Southern leaders with this idea, you take your men and you go take that position. And what did they do? They got lined up and they went to charge the position. Only it wasn't so much of a charge as it was a mile and trudge across an open field into withering artillery, cannon and artillery fire. Until they got to the other side, there was hardly anyone left. It was a terrible, horrible loss of life because of the way that they were led. Or you think about the Old West, not long after the Civil War, one of the dashing figures of the Civil War, Colonel Custer there, General Custer becomes Colonel Custer. He takes a band of troopers and he thinks that he can just whoop any band of Indians they might run up against. He was completely overconfident about his ability to just deal with anything. You know what happened there? He was set upon by a bigger force, and the whole entire troop that he led was slaughtered to a man. Poor leadership, horrible leadership. Tragic whenever, wherever, however you see it. If it's on a massive scale or if it's on a very personal scale, it's tragic. And it seems that the more innocent the victim seems, the more tragic it seems. What I want to talk to you about today goes beyond that. It goes deeper than just this simple issue of leadership. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both the soul and body in hell. Now, whether intentionally or unintentionally, loss leading up to and including life because you're following the wrong person does not compare with the potential of what we will consider today. Today, our fourth installment of the Bad Boys and Bad Girls of the Bible, we're going to look at one of the most famous names in the Bible. This is a name that folks who do not go to church and who do not read the Bible still are a little bit familiar with because it has crept over into popular culture. Today, we want to look at the figure Jezebel. So I would like to read for you a portion of her story. This is found in 1 Kings chapter 21. If you're following along in the weekly devotional, the readings Thursday, Friday, Saturday, give you a little bit of the backstory for Jezebel and her husband Ahab. You can see that the issue that we're going to deal with today, this isn't where it all started to go wrong. Jezebel had some issues. They go way, way back. But I'd like to share with you a particular story from 1 Kings chapter 21. You can follow along in your Bible. Follow on the screen, or maybe when you get a story like this, sometimes people like just sit back, close your eyes, and just picture this. Let the film director, let the Holy Spirit be a film director in your head, and just picture this. Sometime later, there was an incident involving a vineyard belonging to Naboth, the Jezreelite. The vineyard was in Jezreel, close to the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. Ahab said to Naboth, "Let me have your vineyard to use for a vegetable garden, since it's close to my palace. In exchange, I'll give you a better vineyard, or, if you prefer, I will pay you whatever it is worth." But Naboth replied, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers." So Ahab went home, sullen and angry, because Naboth the Jezreelite had said, "I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers." He lay on his bed, sulking, and refused to eat. His wife Jezebel came in and asked him, "Why are you so sullen? Why won't you eat?" He answered her, "Because I said to Naboth the Jezreelite, 'Sell me your vineyard, or if you prefer, I will give you another vineyard in its place.' But he said, 'I will not give you my vineyard.'" Jezebel's wife said, "Is this how you act as king over Israel? Get up and eat. Cheer up. I'll get you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite." So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, placed his seal on them, and sent them to to the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city with him. In these letters she wrote, "Proclaim a day of fasting, and seat Naboth in a prominent place among the people. But seat 2 scoundrels opposite him, and have them testify that he has cursed both God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death." So the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city did as Jezebel directed in the letter she had written to them. They proclaimed a fast and seated Naboth in a prominent place among the people. Then 2 scoundrels came and sat opposite him and brought charges against Naboth before the people, saying, "Naboth has cursed both God and the king." So they took him outside the city and stoned him to death. Then they sent word to Jezebel, "Naboth has been stoned and is dead." As soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned to death, she said to Ahab, "Get up and take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite that he refused to sell you. He is no longer alive, but dead." When Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, he got up and went down to take possession of Naboth's vineyard. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So here we have Jezebel, queen of Israel. Now just understand, when it says queen of Israel, this means queen of the northern kingdom. This is later on in the period of the kings, when God gave the people the land, when they conquered it, when they had kings. The first kings, Saul, David, and Solomon, were king over all of Israel. But after Solomon, things fell apart. And there was a divided kingdom, Judah in the south, Israel in the north. Jezebel is queen in the north. Her husband is Ahab, the king. One of the worst kings. And that's saying something. If you read through the period here that tells about the kingdom period in the Old Testament through Kings and Chronicles, you read about those northern kings, and time again you see when it introduces a new king, so-and-so became king, and he was worse than any who went before him. So-and-so became king, and he was worse than all of those before him. So-and-so became king. He was worse than the worst king ever. Over and over again, just keep getting worse. And Ahab, he was not at the bottom of the list. He was up here at the top. He was a bad king. Jezebel, his queen, is another piece of work. Now, you need to understand this about her because it plays into the story. It helps us to understand. Jezebel is not an Israelite. Jezebel is a princess, a Canaanite princess of Phoenician descent. So what that means, they haven't married her for some political advantage, okay? They set up a little alliance or some kind of treaty with the Phoenician king. What it means, though, is Jezebel has no connection with Israel. She has no connection with God that Israel is supposed to be following. That's very important. Jezebel has no connection with these people that she is ruling over with Ahab. It seems, if you've done any of the reading leading up to today, you hear this story, you read more about Jezebel, it seems she had absolutely no scruples whatsoever. The thing with Jezebel, though, is it seems that she doesn't usually get her hands dirty. She's not the one who goes out and does the deed. She's not the one who goes out and has the prophets killed, or she's not the one who murders Naboth. But what she does is she directs others so that they do. At her direction, there were tons of prophets of God who were killed. At her direction, Naboth, you heard here, is killed. She doesn't get her hands dirty, but she directs. She orchestrates others to do this dirty work, which really leaves her soiled as well. She's just as responsible, just as liable before God as these ones who actually do the killing, who do her bidding. What she is, what Jezebel is, Phoenician princess, queen of Israel, what she is a catalyst for sin. She's a catalyst for sin. See, her sin is not just about herself, but her sin leads to the sin of others. What she does has an impact all around her. The story today is simple enough. You heard just King Ahab, her husband, he wants a vineyard to add on to his palace. Well, that makes sense. Who here wouldn't want to add on a little bit? the homestead set up, you got a nice little plot going. Boy, it'd be really nice if I could just make that a part here, just blend that whole thing in. It doesn't seem totally unreasonable. He goes to Naboth with a request, hey, I'll buy it or I'll swap you. And he's not totally unreasonable about it. But Naboth doesn't want to have anything to do with what Ahab is suggesting. And not only is Naboth within his right, and it's his property, he can do what he wants with it, but Naboth here is within the law. And we need to understand that. What Naboth is responding to Ahab with is not just his own desire, but he's responding to Ahab according to the law. In Leviticus 25:33, there's instruction to the people as they were settling the land. Joshua helps them to settle the land, says, okay, you tribe, you're over here, this tribe, you're up here, this tribe, you're up there. As they're settling the land, Joshua gives them an order from God that they are not to sell their land permanently. The idea is the land was to stay within those families, stay within those tribes as it was first divvied out, as God first gave it to them. Numbers 36, 6-7 goes into this as well. Land is not even supposed to be transferred among tribes. This is the tribe of Dan, it should be the tribe of Dan in perpetuity. This is the tribe of Issachar, it should stay in the land of Issachar forever, and so on. So when Naboth says, no, not interested, he's within his right, and he is following God's law. Another thing that we should note here, Ahab's request, his deal, seems kind of reasonable on its surface. Well, hey, I'd like to have a little more land there. I want to put a vegetable garden. But Ahab's desire to add to the palace goes against the intent of the rules that God has given to govern the king. In Deuteronomy 17:14-20, there is a portion of Scripture where God gives laws that are to govern the king as the king governs the people. And basically what those laws are doing is they are telling there should not be excessive accumulation of wealth by the king. Excessive wealth, excessive accumulation is prohibited. God does not want his kings, the kings over his people, to look like the kings who are over the other peoples around them. Israelite kings were to be modest. You know, we think king, we think person in power, we think great wealth and great means. Oftentimes it takes great wealth and great means to get into power, and once they get into power, they develop and they accumulate more wealth and more power. Israel's kings, Judah's kings, were not to be like that. They were to be distinct and set apart. So Naboth, hearing the king's request, turns it down flatly. And he's well within his right. Maybe he was a little untactful about it. You know, here's the king. You could have said it a little more tactfully. Well, gee whiz, no, I really don't want to do that because, God's word, I want to follow God's word 100. He says, no, the Lord forbid it. He shut the door on Ahab hard. Ahab doesn't say anything. He just goes away sulking. Picture that. Sulking king. Ahab goes away sulking. And Jezebel, his Phoenician princess queen, comes and sees this, and she is not used to this kind of kingship or this kind of response. She can't comprehend it. In Canaanite cultures, the king was absolute. Kingship was absolute. What the king wanted, the king got. She would have seen her father. If he wanted something, he got it. If he said something, it happened. When he said jump, they said how high. When he said go over it, they went. They did whatever he said. That's the way kingship worked in these other cultures around Israel. So when Jezebel sees Ahab with his tail between his legs, oh, I didn't get the vineyard that I wanted, I'm so sad and upset. She cannot comprehend this. It just doesn't make sense. And really, she takes this as an affront against not just Ahab, but against her. So Jezebel sets out to act on the king's behalf, and in the end, we have Ahab fulfilling the prediction of Samuel. Samuel the prophet, who anointed Saul, who anointed David, Samuel, who told the people when they first wanted a king, he warned them many things, including a king will take away the best of your fields and vineyards. This is what happens through Ahab because of what Jezebel does. And what she does is simple enough. She finds two unsavory, unscrupulous men to accuse Naboth of serious crimes. It's interesting, though, and I want you to note here, we look at what Jezebel did. She finds two guys, but no, did she find two guys? No. She sent a letter to the city where Naboth lived, and the elders and the nobles in that city found two. So not only is Jezebel directing someone else to do her dirty work, to commit a sin, to sentence this guy to death, but she is involving however many these nobles and these elders are. She is making them her accomplices in this crime. She lets them figure out the details, but she's completely upfront. I want you to find someone to accuse him. Not he is guilty of these things, and so here's what we need to do. Find someone who will say. It's perfectly clear. She wants them to sin on her behalf against Naboth to get what she wants. You see that here? She's not just directing a little bit, she's directing a whole bunch, and she is not just singling out a person, she is ensnaring a whole group of individuals and making them complicit in her sinful actions. These two were to accuse Naboth of cursing God and cursing the king. That might not sound like too big a deal today with our, hey, First Amendment, you can say anything you want. It is strictly forbidden in Scripture. Exodus 22:28 details this as a sin. And conveniently enough, for Jezebel and Ahab, the penalty in Leviticus 24:15 and 16 is death. Death by stoning. So when she says death for this sin, she's saying the right thing. She's using the law to get what she wants, but she breaks the law to get what she wants. You see what Jezebel does? She uses the law, she breaks the law, she does whatever she wants with the law to get what she wants. It is an ugly, ugly thing. Thinking about this, does this false accusation thing ring a bell for anybody? Does this sound familiar? This is not a one-off event down here with Jezebel. It's not just something in the past. It's not just something that happened way back then. It's the same kind of thing that happened. False witnesses accused Jesus that led to his death. It's the same kind of thing that happened. False witnesses against Stephen, the first martyr, lead to his death. But back to our story. In the end, her evil plot is successful. Naboth is accused. Naboth is executed. And 2 Samuel telling this story, 2 Samuel coming back to it in hindsight, suggests that his sons were too. Not just Naboth, but his sons. Which makes sense because if Naboth had family, he's dead, well, it should go to the kids. Except it tells us in 2 Samuel, she didn't just kill Naboth, she killed the family. That's how Ahab was able to go and claim this vineyard. So Ahab gets his vineyard. It is an ugly, ugly, ugly story. If there's one tiny little redeeming thing, and it's too late for Naboth was an unfortunate victim. If there's one redeeming positive thing here as a result, this affront is so grievous to God that God decides then, when he sees what happens here, enough is enough. And this is the beginning and end for these two, for Ahab and Jezebel. We'll soon have another chapter of another bad king in Israel, but that's another story. So this is an ugly story to see how she goes about getting what he wants. There's no scruples. There's no what's right. There's no, I can be satisfied with what I have. I want what I want. I'll do whatever it takes to get what I want. I think this story is ugly too, not just because of what happened and how it happened, but I think this is an ugly story too, and one that we don't particularly like, because the same kind of thing still happens today. Maybe not with such obvious life and death consequences, but still today, there are those who work behind the scenes and manipulate others to get what they want. Who work behind the scenes and manipulate and get other people to do things that they wouldn't do on their own, to violate their principles, to violate their conscience, to get what they want. And this person, for their own gain, takes down a whole lot of people with them. There are people today whose actions on their own behalf or for another sometimes, like Jezebel, it wasn't for herself, it was for Ahab. People today who for actions for themselves or actions for someone else cause suffering on other people that shouldn't have been affected at all. And it may even lead, it certainly did with Ahab and Jezebel, may lead to sin in others. Jesus addresses this in our gospel lesson today. You heard Bruce read Matthew 18, 1-9. Typical Jesus fashion, what Jesus says cuts deeper than the surface issue. While Jezebel's actions were very deliberate, she was very transparent in what she was trying to do and how she was going about it. Jesus' teaching in the gospel that you heard makes one accountable not just for intentional acts, but also for the negative consequences that arise from unintentional actions. I'd like to reread for you two verses back in Matthew chapter 18, verse 5 and 6. Matthew 18, verse 5 and 6. Whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and be drowned in the depths of the sea. You need to hear what's here and what's not here. It doesn't say, anyone who intentionally causes someone else to sin, you're in trouble. It's anyone who causes another to stumble is in trouble. So it's what we do and it's what we don't do. It's whether we intend it or we don't intend it. If the end result of anything that I do is that it causes someone else to stumble, I got a problem. And Jesus said it'd be better if it's a millstone. That's that great big giant stone that they grind corn with, probably weighing a couple 100 pounds maybe. Tie it around your neck and throw it in the sea. There's no getting up from it. We need to think, really think about what we do. We're getting deep into Lent here, that season when we think about the sacrifice of Jesus, his death on the cross to forgive our sins. We need to think really deeply as followers of Jesus Christ all the time about what we do, because all the time, our actions reflect on Jesus, whether we intend to or not. People see me and they know I'm a believer. If I do something, it must be okay. If I don't do something, I guess it's okay not to do that. So if I act in the wrong way or I don't act in the right way, people see me, they know I'm a believer, and there's some little subconscious thing saying it must be okay. I remember when I was a teenager, the pastor at the time had a couple kids who were right about my age, my brother's age. We were in youth group together. If we wanted to do something, my parents were a little bit hesitant about it. If we said, well, Pastor Bob's letting Jay and Malia do it, we were in. People see you. They know you're a Christian. They see you doing something or not doing something. It's reflecting on Jesus. This same idea, this same teaching that I just quoted for you in Matthew, it's found not just in Matthew, it's found in Mark and Luke 3 different times. And it's not just 3 different times because you have 3 different writers who are telling you from their perspective. There are 3 different times because this is a story that we see when we look at the context. It's repeated. Jesus taught this here, and he taught it here, and he taught it here. There are many things that were so important. Jesus repeated them. He didn't just say it once, and we got lucky that 3 people wrote it down. If it was really important, often Jesus said the same thing here and here and here, because they didn't have 24/7 news. They didn't have people uploading things to YouTube and onto Facebook, and they didn't have Twitter and all those kind of things. If it was important, Jesus kept repeating it, and he repeats this idea here. You need to watch what you do. If you cause someone to sin, it is bad news. We have to take this teaching very seriously, especially here in the season of Lent. We need to reflect on this personally How are my actions influencing someone else? How are my actions influencing others? What is there inside me that's not right? Whatever it is, whether we mean to tear one down or to build up ourselves for another, if anyone can see it, and that's not even thinking about how God sees everything. If anyone can see that thing inside us that is not right, if anyone can see it in any way, our actions always, always, all of them matter. Our actions that come from inside us have the potential not only to hurt someone by the nature of the sin. I can hurt someone because I sin against them. That's by the nature of the sin itself. But the actions that come from me from inside towards someone else, they have the potential to hurt another by the example of the sin. That one who is less mature, one who is maybe not as spiritually mature, one who is maybe in a weak state or a weaker state of mind, one who lacks understanding, might think that it's okay. They see me and Jay and Malia are doing it. They see me do it, and they might do it too. There's a couple ways that our actions or our inactions can hurt others. And let's go back to Jesus in Luke 17, 1 and 2. It's one of those places where he's talking about this. Things that cause people to sin are bound to come, but woe to that person through whom they come. It would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around his neck than for him to cause one of the least of these little ones to sin. And let me just add verse 3 in Luke. So watch yourselves. Jesus doesn't put it out there in a general way. He says it and he personalizes it. Watch yourself. Not others. I'm not supposed to keep an eye on Kurt. That way, I got to start here. I got enough problems before I deal with my brother. Now watch yourself. Look at your heart. Deep down inside your heart. Because you can be sure others, including people who don't believe in Jesus, who on a good day are suspicious of the church and faith itself, they're watching. They're watching. Our relationship with God and their potential relationship with God might just be both in the balance by what they see. And is there any garden that's worth that?